Director at Jewish Social Services. Thank you for pushing the recording button. I forgot to do it. So just everyone knows that we're going to record this and have it available on our CCWT website later on. So Becca's going to do a little more to introduce herself. I just wanted to say, my name is Matt Wolfgram. I'm a researcher at the Wisconsin Center for Education Research. College and career success for refugees is one of my areas of interest. Also Kevin Foley is here as well. He directs the high school completion programs at Madison College. And Kevin, I know you wear a bunch of hats. Is there anything else you can say about your
no, I just wanted to say, yeah, we work, I know there's a couple of other people from Madison College on the call too. And we a lot of times, you know, we work really closely with Becca as kind of the first point of contact for new refugees who have relocated to the Madison area.
Great. So how we're going to do things is I have some questions sort of prepared for Becca. And also she has some slides that she wants to use, which will be helpful for us to understand this, this material. Kevin's going to be monitoring the question. So you guys feel free to go ahead and put questions as they occur to you in the chat. And then we have some breaks that we plan, 3 breaks to just, you know, to get to your questions, and Kevin's going to moderate those. All that said, Becca, for starters, I thought it'd be nice just to sort of, could you introduce yourself by talking a little bit about your background? I think it's interesting work that you do, and how did you get into it?
Sure. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. And I always appreciate having the opportunity to talk about the work that we're doing here in Madison. My background is that I went to business school, and then, like a lot of people who go to business school, I went right into the Peace Corps, which, you know, kind of a joke. But, and so that took me overseas, and I stayed there for over 10 years. I was working in nonprofit and social enterprise, and by the time I came back here, I found myself, I grew up in Middleton, so right outside of Madison. And by the time I got back here, I found myself just in the right place at the right time. And the time that I spent in East and West Africa just lent itself to being able to sort of jump in and start this program at Jewish Social Services.
So were you the first resettlement director at Jewish Social Services? You launched the program?
Yeah.
Okay.
I came in at an odd time when it had been decided and sort of started by the staff that were there, and then they needed someone to take it on. So okay, that was my job.
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to get some, I thought, you know, with your background and all your knowledge and work that you've done in this area, I wanted to take a little time to kind of fill our audience in and get us kind of all on the same page about sort of refugee resettlement policy and how that all works. And so first thing I wanted to ask about was just that UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, they recognize several categories of displaced persons, each with their own sort of legal statuses and experiences. In fact, I think in our discussions, we've started to refer to refugees as people with refugee background, because there's so many different kinds of experiences and different ways in which that is realized. And so could you describe these categories of displaced persons? Who in particular does Jewish Social Services serve?
Sure. I'm going to share this presentation just as so people have a way to visualize it a little bit. Can everyone see that?
It looks good.
So the definition of a refugee, I'm just going to read this here, but an individual who has a well-founded fear of persecution due to race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion, who has fled their country of origin and cannot safely return. So one of the important parts of being a refugee, in addition to the persecution, is where is this person? If the person is still in their country of origin, then they are not a refugee. They would be called an internally displaced person. So in the context of the United States, all refugees have been vetted and gone through a lengthy process that I'll get into later on. So another group that we work with is called Special Immigrant Visa Holders. And in fact, at times we have been serving more SIV holders than refugees by definition. It's a special visa that is available to Iraqi and Afghan nationals who have worked with our military overseas. And their basis of persecution is the fact that they have worked with the US military overseas. So we have, our clients who are SIV have been almost exclusively Afghan nationals. Finally, there's Asylum Seeker. We heard in the news, we hear a lot about asylum seekers for the last few years anyway. And that is a person who has been forced to leave their country and directly seek legal status in the US rather than abroad. Once someone is granted that status, then they become an asylee, and asylees and SIVs have many of the same rights as refugees, and the same are eligible for the same benefits. So in addition to those categories, we have undocumented immigrants. We also have Cuban Haitian entrants and Amerasians who are considered to be under what we call the refugee umbrella, and have also the same benefits in most cases as refugees. Those two groups, from my knowledge, are very much smaller, and JSS has not worked with those groups in the past.
Okay, thank you. So I guess the next thing is, can you describe sort of the process for a refugee coming to the United States? And Becca, I later on I'll ask about sort of step by step how you sort of support refugees in our community, but sort of here I'm sort of asking about what it takes to come here for someone,
Mm-hmm.
and what sort of institutions support that, and agencies. Sure. And so on.
I stopped my screen share too soon. Let me go back to that. Mm-hmm. So this is a chart that I like to use because I think it lays it out quite simply. When a family or an individual flees their country of origin, and it's almost always, but doesn't have to be a country nearby, but very often it is a country right next door to their country of origin, they then seek to register with UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. At that point, there's some vetting, there's some interviews that happen, and then the UN will refer specific cases that they think will be accepted by the US system to the Department of State, specifically the Bureau of Population, Refugees and Migration, or PRM. At that point, the United States takes over the assessment of the case, additional vetting and interviews and background checks go on. That brings in the Department of Homeland Security and US intelligence agencies. That process from fleeing one's country to sort of being ready and checked, and there are also, in addition, there are health checks that happen, can take, according to our clients that we've spoken to, that can take as short as a year and a half or 2 years, or as long as 20 years or more. At that point, the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program and the PRM, Department of State, refers cases to one of 9 national agencies. I have listed HIAS because that's our national agency, but most of the agencies are faith-based. So you have the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, Lutheran Immigrant and Refugee Services. There's also IRC. So those are the resettlement agencies that have then affiliates or other methods of resettling locally. HIAS has, I think, 15 affiliates across the country, of which JSS is one. And we work with HIAS and the government agencies, as well as the State Bureau of Refugee Programs to do the resettlement on the ground. And I have to give a shout out to all the volunteers and private citizens that work with us, because our office started out as just me, and then it grew to 2 people and stayed there for a while. And it's a lot of work for us. We really rely heavily on volunteers.
This is a really complicated situation that this diagram has really helped make clear. Thank you. Refugee policy, the sort of laws, treaties, and things that govern what you do, and policies, how has that come about? How does it change? What are the goals of the U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program?
So the goals of all of the refugee resettlement programs in the United States are essentially self-sufficiency. We want to, the goal is to provide refuge, but the long-term goal is self-sufficiency and community integration. And that does sound kind of harsh and not too caring, but what I'm often reminding the people that we work with about is that the helping people to become self-sufficient and integrate into their new community is in many ways the most caring thing that we can do. You asked about policy. Did you want me to go into that?
Sure. Yeah. Point? Thank you.
Sure. So immigration law is a huge beast that we as a country have been arguing about for a long time. But that immigration law can be made and changed through the standard legislative process. However, the majority of changes that we have seen recently are solely determined by the executive branch through the presidential determination and executive orders. The presidential determination is supposed to happen every year in September or so, where the president determines how many refugees are going to be admitted in the following fiscal year, and often dictates some of the allocations of the groups that people belong to, as well as the places that they come from or the regions that they come from. So, for example, this latest presidential determination was the lowest that it has ever been, at 15,000 for fiscal year 2021. And the largest group was for religious people fleeing religious persecution. That was set to be 5,000 people of the 15. So that has not, we're expecting that it's possible that President Biden will change that. But we have not, we don't have any details yet about that. The other example that I gave was executive orders. Refugee resettlement has changed a lot due to executive orders in the last few years. So one example is the Muslim ban that was recently overturned by President Biden. The executive order that created the Muslim ban also the original also halted refugee admissions in total from any country for 120 days. And it also reduced the presidential determination that was sent by President Obama from 110,000 for the year to 50,000 for the year. So that was, yeah, that was struck down pretty quickly by a number of lawsuits. So we didn't go for 6 months without any arrivals, but that was in the first few months of our program. So it was an exciting time, I guess.
It's been a rough couple of years. Has Hyas involved in these the organization which you affiliate with? Are they involved with these lawsuits or advocacy work on behalf of refugees, or how does that? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Hyas has been. I don't have the details in front of me, but Hyas has been involved in lawsuits against the Trump administration at least 3 times in the last few years. First around the Muslim ban, and second around the other executive orders that were affecting how we were able to do our work and how people were able or not able to come to this country.
So I guess just to kind of wrap up our discussion about policy, how has like the policies and the climate created by the Trump administration, how has this impacted your work?
Well, yeah, so it's hard to say because we don't know any other. JSS's resettlement program doesn't know any other administration, but from what I've heard of how things worked before we started this work, it has just been very unpredictable. So in some of our funding is based on the number of individuals that we resettle. So that has been difficult to plan for. So the low numbers has also been a challenge. So we have, we have lots of partners in the community who maybe didn't get to bring in new refugees for a long time because there's large gaps in between arrivals. I think that those low arrivals also played a part in the closing of many affiliate offices across the country. We're very lucky that we were not affected by it in any big way, staffing wise, and we didn't have to close.
That's good.
But
we've lost Lutheran Social Services had an affiliate office here in Madison.
Yes.
Now they still have their office in Milwaukee, but
Correct.
No longer here.
Correct. And I guess looking forward, we have heard that President Biden aims to set the presidential determination at 125,000. We're not exactly sure how that's going to work or what it's going to look like maybe the first year. Because of the pandemic, we know that it is next to impossible to try to resettle 125,000 people with the remaining months of the fiscal year up until October. So I have heard that PRM, the State Department, is talking about aiming for 20,000 for this year, and that would be pretty good. That would be higher than the last couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll probably we may learn something soon. So we should all be paying attention to see what comes down. Well, okay. So Kevin, are there some questions? One thing I wanted to mention to everyone, which I didn't mention at the beginning. So afterwards, if anybody wants to stick around, we'll hang out for a little bit, and we'll continue like sort of discussion, and I think in particular sort of brainstorming about ways in which what we're learning about can inform ways to improve college and career access for people with refugee backgrounds. So we'll continue that discussion in particular afterwards for those who want to hang out with us. But Kevin, what questions were there?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the first question was just, is there a way for for the participants today to get maybe a copy of the presentation that you're sharing, Becca?
Sure, I'll figure out a way to send it out. I guess, actually, I shouldn't say that. I can send it out, and I guess we can work with Matt's team to see if we can send it out to the registrants.
Thank you. And then we'll put up the video itself on the on our website as well.
Great. The next question comes from Sarah Feinsilver, and her question is from a faculty and classroom perspective. Normally on the first day of class, we do introductions and ask students, where they're from. And through this group, she said she's come to realize that these could maybe not the best questions. Are there any other suggestions that you have?
I don't know, maybe just sort of simplifying the question a little bit more, and maybe asking what language is their primary language, or asking what they want to share. What do you want to share with us about who you are and your past? I don't know. And I am seeing now that there's a bunch of my colleagues in this who are attendees. So if they have any ideas, they should also type something into the chat.
Great. And this question is from Suzanne Triber, and she asks, does JSS work in conjunction with Open Doors for Refugees in Madison? And do the organizations support each other? And if yes, how?
Yeah, thank you. We work very closely with Open Doors for Refugees. Open Doors more or less provides all of the volunteer hours and the volunteer people power that we need to make this work. And we like to say, I guess in a good way, we're kind of codependent, that they depend on us for bringing in the refugee clients and working with them. And we very much depend on them to get the job done.
Great. And then the last question I think you touched on quite a bit is just what changes can we expect with a new administration? And you talked a lot about the presidential determination and some of the challenges with the pandemic. Anything else to add to that?
We don't know yet. I think in possibly this week and possibly in the coming weeks, we should know a lot more about what this new administration has in their plans, and what PRM and the State Department also are planning on.
Great.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for those questions, everyone. I guess one thing that this questions reminded me of was the Madison Refugee Union that Hyas and you created. That so this is a group of people that are were your clients who have kind of come together in an organization. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So I guess it was 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, Hyas gave us the opportunity to come out to DC for an advocacy trip to learn how to advocate for refugees. And they also allowed us to bring 3 clients with us, which was really exciting for them and for us, to meet with our elected officials and the staff of our elected officials. And what came out of that was that those clients were particularly excited to keep that going. And they formed the Madison Refugee Union, and with some help from JSS, they have decided to both work in advocating for refugee populations, but also be leaders in the community and help newcomers to get used to and integrate into the community. I always say that I think that someone who comes from the same country as you is better equipped to teach teach you how to move around than I am, for example.
It seems like a really great idea. Do you know if any other resettlement orgs have picked that up? Just curious.
I would have to think that probably they have. I don't remember hearing specifically about it though.
Yeah, it's a really cool idea. Okay, so I wanted to shift the conversation to sort of refugees and people with refugee background here in Madison. First question I have is just, what is the composition of the refugee communities in Madison? What about elsewhere in the state as well?
Okay. Actually, maybe I'll go back. Hold on. I have these charts that I forgot about. I'm a little bit of a chart nerd, so bear with me.
That'll be good. Some charts is good.
Yeah. This chart, it's very small writing, so I apologize. I didn't have a good way to show it, but this is showing refugee admissions by region of origin, starting in 1975 on the left and all the way to 2020 on the right. And that it was only part of 2020, but it goes up through sort of the beginning of the pandemic, February 29th, 2020, when things really slowed down a lot. So you can see how things have changed over time. Then this chart is really useful to see. The blue line is the ceiling, the presidential determination, and the orange line is how many were admitted that year. You'll notice that in 2019, the number was the same. And I can tell from experience that once we hit that number, that people were turned away. People who were who had travel, who had plane tickets, travel was canceled. And that was really disastrous for some of the families who are going to be reunited with their loved ones.
Yeah, definitely.
So here is this is some of the main populations that have been resettled in Wisconsin, not in Madison. The largest is Burmese, and that group of people has been resettled, I think, almost entirely in Milwaukee. Then it's interesting to watch sort of in 2014, 15, 16, we have Arabic speakers coming in. The orange line is Iraq. The maroon line is Syria. And then the purple line is DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, that has been rising. So that's interesting to look at. You probably don't want to look at this, but it's just the numbers behind that chart. So the significant populations in Madison has before JSS got started, LSS was very active in resettling the Bhutanese community. And we have not resettled anyone from the Bhutanese community, but that is a large refugee population, along with Iraqis and Syrians. We have continued to resettle some Iraqis and Syrians, but our largest populations have been Afghan, mainly SIVs, and people from Central Africa. So that is mainly Democratic Republic of Congo, a few from Burundi, and a few from Rwanda.
Yeah, thank you for the bird's eye survey of all that. That's really wonderful to know. So at JSS, what kinds of services do you provide for the people that you serve?
Okay. Well, first of all, JSS does other work aside from refugee resettlement. I just want to give a little bit of a shout out to that, to my colleagues. We work with seniors, and we also work with anyone in need, regardless of religious background or immigration status. For our resettlement program, we have a program called Reception and Placement, and that is the program for when people first arrive through their first 90 days. And that is intensive case management, everything from setting up housing to social security cards to healthcare, getting kids enrolled in school, ESL, and anything that they need to sort of get their bearings and get set up here. We also have a program called Preferred Communities, which is intensive case management for people who are in need of extra case management if they have particular barriers and vulnerabilities that they're working through. And we also, finally, we have refugee support services, which is mainly geared toward employment, but not entirely. And that is, the last two are people can enroll for the first 5 years that they're in the country.
So you've talked a little bit about this already, but I guess just talk about the partners that are helping JSS and are contributing to this effort to welcome refugees to our community.
Sure. I already mentioned Open Doors for Refugees. They're a huge partner of ours. We're even this year we're going into different partnership and new ideas. So we're working with them on developing the strategy for community integration for Madison. We work with the Literacy Network and Madison College for ESL and for the high school equivalency. We work closely with MMSD. Group Health Cooperative is a lifesaver for us when it comes to getting people connected with healthcare. Forward Service Corporation, the State Bureau of Refugee Programs, also the other resettlement affiliates around the state, so LSS and IIW and World Relief are important partners, especially as we were getting started when we were very new. I know I'm forgetting someone, so I apologize.
Yeah. But that's a great team. Yeah, it is. That's wonderful. Yeah, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to describe for everyone the process of, so the steps, the process of helping someone become part of our community.
So I just made a list of some of the required services for the reception and placement program. First, when HIAS sends us a case, we take a look at the details of that case and we say, yes, we think that we can resettle them, or no. So one example, we had a single Sudanese lady who was going to come here, and we know that there's one of my colleagues is Sudanese, so we were able to say there really isn't much of a community here and she wouldn't have that community level support. So we said we didn't think we would do such a great job resettling her, and she went to a place that had a larger community. So we assure the case, then there's travel booked and we have to rush and find and furnish housing. We provide food and a meal on arrival. We pick people up at the airport or the bus stop. And then we jump right into the services that it takes to get people connected to resources. So I think I mentioned Social Security, food share, Badger Care, cash benefits, healthcare, cultural orientation. There's a curriculum of cultural orientation that we provide in appropriate languages. School enrollment for kids, ESL for adults. And then we help them make a plan for the additional services that they will need to become self-sufficient.
So that's a lot. That's a lot. How long does that process go on for? I'm wondering.
So all of that should be done within the first 30 days.
Oh my, yeah. And then I suppose there's sort of longer term supports that are available as well.
Right. Yes. So assistance with finding employment. We partner closely with Forward Service Corporation on that. You know, just helping people navigate systems. I think that that's sort of the main thing that's ongoing, and letting them know that they can always be reaching out and walking that fine line between encouraging people to do things on their own and, you know, knowing what we should do for them and with them and then let them do.
Right. So that it's like teaching how to navigate the system so that they can do some of that on their own later.
Right.
It seems like. Yeah. So what challenges do people with refugee background face coming to Madison?
So most often they're quite poor when they arrive in the US. Sometimes that's not the case, but most often they are eligible for the benefits that people are eligible for who have low income. In fact, mostly they don't have any income when they first arrive. And one of the first things they need to do is find a way to get that income, usually a job. Learning to, like you said, learning to navigate our systems and operate in a language that is foreign to them is, I'm trying to imagine what that's like, but I can't imagine that it's easy. It's such a challenge for a lot of people. And there's not much time to get acclimated before they are expected to be financially self-sufficient. JSS actually provides rent for, we guarantee that we'll pay the security deposit in the first 4 months of rent, which is above and beyond what we're required to pay, but we want people to be able to take a breath and start to navigate those systems before they need to jump into working immediately. But I want to also be sure to point out that people who come through the refugee admissions program are generally very resilient, and they, you know, they're surprising us and doing great things and really making us proud every day.
That's wonderful. I guess, you know, I'm wondering about like constraints on your work, like resource constraints or staffing constraints, or just like what sort of resources do you struggle, you know, resource constraints do you struggle with in this work?
I guess my answer was, I was looking at the sort of, maybe not resources. Well, I guess it's still a resource. So housing in Madison is pretty difficult.
Right.
Affordable housing that is near public transportation, that is big enough for some of the families that are coming, is pretty difficult to find. So that is one of our main constraints right now. Language interpretation just is an extra layer that can provide for miscommunication. So that working through that is sometimes a challenge. Navigating the healthcare system is sometimes a challenge for people. Then COVID, I think, has been a huge constraint. You know, we haven't been able to do face-to-face meetings for the last several months, and there's a challenge, a big barrier of digital literacy for some populations. So there's also a sort of the work versus ESL problem. And there are a few employers that provide ESL services and programs and classes, but they're very few. And so usually what happens is people start their ESL class and then they start work and they stop going to ESL, which sort of stops their education for that time. because very often their work is pretty demanding and they just are too exhausted to participate in ESL. So that is a big challenge for people. And then finally, the trauma from past experiences sometimes arises when we're least expecting it, and understanding how to work with people who are going through that. I think we're working through it, but that sometimes causes challenges.
Oh, I'm sure. So Kevin, do we have some questions that we can?
Yep,
throw out there?
absolutely.
Thanks.
The first question is from Bethany, and you were talking about how the ceiling was hit in 2019, I believe, Becca, and she asked if someone is turned away due to the ceiling being hit, can they apply for the next year, or do they have to start the process all over again?
To my knowledge, and I'm not an expert of the overseas process, but I don't think it really works like that. So normally it doesn't work like that, I should say. So we, some of the people in our experience of flights being canceled, which had never happened before or very rarely happens, they were rebooked in the next fiscal year, several months later. Maybe even, in this case, it might have even been a year later. And then we also have someone whose flight was canceled who has not yet arrived. We don't yet have travel for them. So things that do happen is that that health medical checks expire. Other security checks expire. So sometimes it's not totally back to the drawing board, but there's other stuff that needs to be redone if they don't travel in a certain amount of time.
Yeah, okay, I gotcha. All right, the next question, you also gave that example about the Sudanese individual. Do you find that refugees want to resettle closer to their community or away from their community? In my experience, I've noticed SIVs in particular show mixed preferences in this regard.
Interesting. For the most part, I think I have noticed that people like being part of a community, even up to the point where people who are coming to the United States from the same country, but some are refugees and some aren't. We see that the refugees tend to stick together because they have that shared experience. I don't think that that's the case for everyone. For example, LGBTQ refugees may want to stay as far away from the people from their country of origin as possible in some cases. So, you know, just like any group of people, there's a wide range of realities for people in the refugee community.
Great, thank you. This next question is from Larry, and he asks, how long is one's refugee status valid for? Does it expire?
That's a good question. So once they're here, once they have arrived, I guess it doesn't really expire. I'm not a legal expert either, but I'm just thinking about some cases that I'm familiar with. Their refugee status and therefore their right to work in this country does not expire. They are supposed to, by law, they're required to apply for adjustment of status to get their green card and permanent residence after they've been here for 12 months. Then once they've been here for 5 years, they are eligible to apply for citizenship. So at that point, I guess, their refugee status stops mattering, even at the point of getting your green card.
Right.
Great. And the next question is from Dorothy. She asks, how does JSS get their funding to provide the support services?
So the programs that I mentioned, the RNP, reception and placement, preferred communities, and refugee support services, the programs are affiliated with grants that give us funding, either based on the number of people enrolled, or in some cases, the number of people that were served in previous years, and the people that are known to be arriving. JSS also does separate private fundraising for what we need to do. That's how we're able to provide the extra rent that we do. Yeah.
And you're doing some fundraising here in the upcoming months, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to give a quick plug for that,
Well,
Becca?
Yeah.
Stay posted. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to put some stuff out on social media. It's actually pretty exciting. We're gonna put out an ask with all of our partners, or many of our partners in the community. So if there are people who are have some money that they are looking to put to use with organizations who are doing good work locally, we'll have a list of organizations that we work with who are doing great work in Dane County.
Great.
Wonderful.
All right, couple more here. What kinds of mental health supports are available and provided for refugees who are coping with traumatic events that occurred before or in the process of immigration?
Part of part of the required services is a refugee health assessment. And that is mainly focused on physical health, but we work with group health to make sure that they also do a mental health assessment, and make sure at that point that our clients are aware of the resources that are available to them. Unfortunately, people don't often take up that opportunity, whether it's to do with stigma or just being very new in the country and not having that idea that this is something that I need at that point. So we're working also with HIAS. We have a new program, the Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Program, that we're going to be working on in the coming months. And that is around using groups to go through a curriculum of mental health support, mainly around the COVID and being isolated.
Great. Here's a question about, are refugees eligible to apply for FAFSA?
I do not know. I'll have to take that note and go ask the experts. Oh, Amy knows the answer to that question.
Okay.
Do you want to type it, Amy?
Yeah, you could put it
in, Amy, if you know. And
I don't
and
believe so, but
yeah. Okay, only citizens are eligible for FAFSA.
Well, yeah, we work with a lot of refugees through Madison College, and when I was doing advising, I worked with a lot of them, and I think as long as they are have, you know, there's some documents that they'll ask for. One of them is like a permanent resident card. They should at least be able to apply for FAFSA and get through that process if they have that. And that's typically like what Becca said, within 12 months of when they're getting here, they have to apply for that permanent residency.
Okay. Now anything permanent residents are eligible. So they're not eligible until they get their green card, and that they can apply for their green card at about 12 months. And that process, it varies a bit, but it's now taking 7 to 8 months. So someone who wants to come in and apply immediately for FAFSA is probably not going to be able to. But although one thing that I didn't point out about SIV, which is a large population that we resettle, is that they get their green card right away. So they would be eligible right away.
Okay. Okay. So the SIVs get their permanent residency card almost when they, like, right when they get here. Okay. Related to that, are there restrictions on employment for individuals on refugee status?
No, I mean, they can, they just can't work. There are certain jobs in the government that you need to be a citizen to take, so they're not eligible for those. But other than that, there really isn't.
Alrighty. The next one, our area has been seeing an increase in secondary migration of refugees. If a refugee is settled in one area and then moves to another one, are they eligible for refugee-specific support in that new community?
Yes. The only way that they wouldn't be is if they move within the first 90 days, then we need to do a special transfer. And if there's any of that money that's associated with that left, then they can still get that. It's called reception and placement money. But we can definitely, the other programs they're eligible for when they move.
Great. And what's a typical caseload for a case manager with JSS?
So I'm laughing because we have only known this administration. So it's been extremely unpredictable and just up and down. But for example, this past year we resettled 28 individuals, and a couple years before we resettled 65 individuals. We have a goal to resettle up to about 100 per year, which would be, probably about 30, 35 families. Am I doing that right? So that's our goal. And per case manager, I'm going to say we have a goal to be able to handle up to 65 or 75 individuals per year.
Great. And then question here, how does one partner with JSS to work with your clients?
I guess that depends. Feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat and we can talk about it. We want to, for volunteers and for other programs, we want to make sure that the best interest of our clients is being considered. And while we know that volunteers have thoughts about what they can provide, the needs of the client come first. So that's what we need to take a look at. I'll put my email address in the chat now.
All right.
And Open Doors for Refugees is a voluntary organization, and they like to have support too. Is that another way to do that too? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I see Colleen Larson also put in a sort of a link here to some of the questions related to FAFSA that we were discussing before. And then the last question I think might be addressed in one of the different webinar series. It's related to higher education opportunities and challenges of students from refugee backgrounds. Matt, I'm not sure if you wanted to talk about the rest of the refugee.
So I do. We're coming up on 4 o'clock. I kind of wanted to get a little bit of a discussion going about about this issue of access to college and careers for people with refugee background. And we do have a series of panelists who will provide other opportunities for that as well. But I guess, Becca, is there anything that you want to say about you sort of your experiences with helping refugees access college opportunities and potentially obstacles that they faced in that area?
I guess so. We've been doing this for just about just over 4 years. And we have not yet gotten to a place where I'm aware anyway, that people have been, applying to programs at the UW. I know that a lot of our clients are participating in programs with Madison College. And I know just from some previous panels that Madison College is a very comfortable place for them to be once, even while they're learning English. So that is what I've heard. The barriers, I've heard that credentialing can be a challenge. Very often people would need to get re-credentialed or have things translated, or maybe even do the whole thing over again. High school education, interestingly, is, if they have that diploma, or if they have completed high school, then they don't need to do anything that is sort of taken. But a lot of other education that was completed overseas may not count for as much here. So I know that is a barrier. Language, I think, is the biggest barrier that we're seeing in our clients. Before I learned about the HSED program at Madison College, we had some people trying to do the GED, and they spoke French fluently, but that's not, and it used to be, like a few years ago, it used to be a language that someone could do the GED in Wisconsin, but then it stopped. So they had to then first learn English. And I think that is especially when people are, very excited and enthusiastic about something that they want to learn, they want to start school, but nope, you can't do that until you have a certain level of English. And I think, that's sort of just how it is, but it does tend to be sort of frustrating, because that, to get to a level where you're able to attend university in English, it could take a few years to get there, right?
Well, just before everyone jumps off, there's a couple things I wanted to say. First of all, thank you, Becca, so much for this really enlightening experience. I've learned a lot. It really helps us to get a sense of what's going on, and the benefit of your experience is really appreciated, and the work you do, you and your partners. Let me just sort of say a couple things. First of all, Becca is the first in our webinar series. In February 23rd, Professor Paul Van Aken, who's a professor of sociology at UW-Oshkosh, he's going to be our guest. And he's really done one of the largest studies of the sociological studies of the resettlement process in Wisconsin. And I don't really believe he's reported much yet from that study. So that's, I believe, is going to be very interesting to talk with him and potentially some of his researchers and students. That's Paul Van Aken, February 23rd, 3 o'clock again. And you can register on that flyer that we've been promoting. Then March 30th is Professor Sarah Dryden Peterson from Harvard University. And she's really a really wonderful scholar on issues of education in general for refugees. And she just recently wrote a paper on citizenship education for refugees. So we're interested to talk to her about that, as well as many other things that her research can enlighten us on. So that's going to be really interesting. Then our April webinar is with Corinne Brown, and she's the director of One Earth International Credentials Evaluations. And I think this is going to be a really interesting interaction, because we'll dive deep into this problem that Becca just mentioned of credentialing refugees. And she's a person who is expert at helping people navigate that complicated process. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then lastly, our May webinar is going to be, so that's May 25th, always at 3 o'clock. That's going to be a panel of students with refugee background, and Sarah Feinsilver, who's on this call, and some of our other members of our team who are putting this together, are organizing a small panel, and that's just going to be wonderful because we'll get to they'll share about their story and be available for like engagement. And so I think that's going to be a really great way to end this webinar series. So the goal is to think about overall the goal of the webinar series is to think about ways to support higher education access and success for people with refugee background. So what I'll say is that if anyone wants to hang out here for a little bit and talk more about that, we can do that. We'll stick around for a little bit. Otherwise, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Becca, for this wonderful opportunity. And I hope to see you every third Tuesday of the month this spring at 3 o'clock for this webinar series. So go ahead and get yourself registered, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Becca.
I think if people want to stick around, we can ask questions. We can unmute them if they ask to be unmuted.
There was one other one that we didn't quite get to, and it was related. You kind of touched on this a little bit too. It has to do with what are some of the benefits and challenges specifically to resettling in Madison compared to other communities?
Well,
that's good.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because many HIAS affiliates are like in New York and Seattle and Bay Area. So I feel a little silly saying that it's expensive, but it is. Finding affordable housing is still difficult. So that is something, you know, when I compare that to Milwaukee or the Fox Valley, other places where refugees are resettled, even in Wisconsin, I think that our housing is the most expensive in the state. So there's that. I think the fact that some of our communities are still sort of in their first stages and aren't such big groups is also maybe, you know, maybe people would prefer there to be a larger Syrian community when they arrive here, and there just isn't a huge Syrian refugee community here. So our public transportation isn't awesome. It's something that people depend on for the most part for their first several months at least. I think, you know, the weather here is is very different from a lot of the places that people are coming from, but
can't do too much about that. But
the things that Madison is great for is that our community is so supportive of the work that we're doing. And I think that the clients they notice that, they see that, and actually, especially certain members of the Madison Refugee Union are always talking about how great Madison is, and to the point where, you know, people are starting to pick up and move.
Wonderful. Well, so folks are welcome to, I think that you can ask us to unmute you. We could definitely do that. I don't want to, there's enough of you where I don't want to go and unmute absolutely everyone, but if you want to be unmuted, go ahead, like raise your hand. Is that how that works? Or also type a question into the chat if you like, or if you have ideas or topics that we can think about for how to support refugees in our community, put that into the chat or ask to be unmuted. We want to compile these ideas and questions into a document by the end of this webinar series that we can use to sort of guide our thinking in Madison about how to support education for refugees.
Thank you, Emily.
Nice.
Merci.
Becca, did you, when you're in the Peace Corps, what languages did you learn? Mostly French, or?
Well, so I spoke French already,
Yeah.
and so I got to use French, and then I learned Wolof.
Wolof, oh,
Who
wonderful.
knows where Wolof is from?
So my advisor and my Judith Irvin, my research dissertation advisor, did her work among the Wolof.
Okay, so you should know where that
Senegal.
is.
I do know Senegal. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I was in Peace Corps in Senegal, and then I moved to Uganda. For 4 years, I was working in renewable energy, and then I moved to Ghana. Also renewable. The rest is renewable energy. Ghana and Nigeria, and then back to Uganda. It was a lot of a very different lifestyle.
Yeah, quite an adventure. And then you came home.
Yeah.
Well, so I think it's probably okay to end our little extra discussion here. I do think this is a good idea as we do this series to save a little time at the end if people want to hang out and chat. And as our webinar series goes, we'll dive deeper into the issues of education and access to careers for people with refugee background. But I hope to see you all next month to talk with Professor Van Ecken. I think that's going to be great too.
Oh, the fundraiser. Oh, I wasn't expecting that, Kevin. So, so JSS, I had this idea. Yeah, I guess we could, or if you want to go ahead on Facebook, you can follow JSS. So we're sort of creating this web of organizations that are doing good work in Dane County and working with people. And so I had this idea that I got my stimulus check, and I was like, I'm not often in this position to have several $100s to want to give away, right? And I was thinking that I'm probably not the only one, and that I bet someone who knows JSS and knows the work that we do would want to hear who we're working with as options to give to. So I started reaching out to our partners and seeing if they would be interested in being listed, and then also reciprocating. So posting their partners on their social media, including JSS, so that, helps us by getting our name out there a little bit more, and just spread some goodwill, because how often are you hearing nonprofits say, give to other people and us, it's almost always give to us, but I thought that would catch people's attention. And so we're just finalizing who we're going to list and how, and we hope to put something out by next week or so.
That's a great idea.
Thanks. I hope it works out.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a lot of moving parts right now.
Yeah. Well, it'll be great to see what, it's another way to see who is doing the work in the community, so it has an educational component.
Yeah, you gotta, Becca, you have to hit up Madison College employees, because I'm just seeing if there's maybe Nancy is the other attendee who's still on here, but we're getting a bonus, a COVID bonus of some of the full-time employees. Are getting like anywhere between 300 to 600, so they're gonna have some extra money too.
Okay, Kevin.
Good for you guys.
Send that out. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to reach Madison College staff. But maybe I'll type up an email and send it to you to forward out.
So thank you. With all that said, thank you everyone for your time and engagement. This is been a great opportunity, and we have more dates together this spring. So we'll be seeing you all then. Have a good evening, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.